Alright guys, this is my no BS guide to how to improve your gameplay and get better parses in WoW. For the sake of example, I'm going to use WoW SOD and I'm going to use my most recent run and the parses that I put out as an example because it'll be a good way of you saying, I want to apply this to myself, so you can kind of just follow along. I'm a hunter player. Wow, I have a brain. Who would have thought? So let's go to Warcraft logs. This is going to be your best friend. It's going to have all the data you need. And we're going to go into the rankings, right? So we go to rankings and it's going to be like this. And we're going to go to hunter, melee. We're going to look at this data. Now, I already have this pulled up and I want to look at Thomi. And the reason I want to look at Thomi is two things. One, I play on Alliance. He's on Alliance. That's a factor we don't have to worry about. This was March 7th. Today is March 9th. So it's the same patch of the parse that I had because I also did March 7th. So all other factors the same. Let's look at Thomi and let's look at me. Okay, so first of all, when you click into it, this will be the page you're taken to. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to click into Thomi's damage done. And we could look at what is actually contributing to his DPS on the right. As we can see, he is a cat with flanking strike, claw, melee, and bite. For me, I have a cat with melee, claw, bite, and flanking strike. My cat is 44% of my damage. His cat is 43% of his damage. That's about the same, although his cat is doing way more damage than mine. So that's something where then I can go to the drawing board and say, oh, do I just not have the right abilities trained? Do I not have the right cat? Like, what's going on there? The other thing is it could also be his stats are way higher and the pet scaling is being affected by that. So if we look, he has his melee, his raptor strike offhand. Melee, raptor strike offhand, all the same. And then he has Fire Shield, Flanking Strike, Goblin Landmine, Arcana Shredder, Breath of Fire, the Bomb, Explosive Trap, Shadow Bolt, and Wing Clip. Okay, so if I don't want to be engineering and I don't want to use those, what's left? Well, the Arcana Shredder, the Breath of Fire, which is Consume, the Shadow Bolt, which is a weapon Consume, and he's Wing Clipping. And I'll explain why he's Wing Clipping and I was not. If we look at his auras, the Flanking Strike, which, you know, if you get lucky, you just get more damage because of the higher uptime. For those of you who don't know, Flanking Strike increases the damage of your Raptor Strike. Then we have the Frenzy Effect, which I'm going to have Flanking Strike Frenzy Effect as well. The Neurological Shock as well, which is the Helm. So these three are the same. I also have the Void Madness because I'm running the gloves because I didn't get the gloves that increase attack power. So that's an effect that I have that he doesn't. But what he has that I don't is Wild Strikes. Now, if you look at Wild Strikes specifically, how much is that contributing to his damage? Well, it's actually contributing 200. Really, it's whatever this is, which is about 200, right? So just because I don't have a feral druid in my group, I'll show you my group composition. My group composition was paladin, hunter, mage, paladin, shadow priest, rogue, holy paladin, holy priest. What was his group's composition? Well, he had the feral druid, which I didn't have. And it was him, the paladin, 2 mages, priest, warlock, a warrior, arcane mage, and priest, right? If you go to Thomi's buffs, we can see this, right? So wild strikes. Look at my buffs. No wild strikes. Unfortunate. Really, really unfortunate. The other thing is faster kill times usually result in more damage. So if I look at, well, what if I'm doing my rotation wrong? I can actually go into the timeline and I can see exactly what he's doing and as it's happening in the fight. Cat, we don't got to worry about that. We just want to see in relation the Raptor strikes and flanking strikes, right? He opens up, Raptor strike, flanking strike, and then he uses flanking strike, then raptor strike, flanking strike, and the fight's basically over at that point. We can see his melee uptime completely up. If you look at mine, I am way too late to the melee. I raptor striked twice before a flanking strike, which is bad cooldown management. After that, I was using flanking strike whenever it was up and making sure I did it before raptor strike. If you look, my uptime graph on my melee was really bad. I remember during this fight, I had to do some shenanigans with the pet to get the pet off of a healer. So, it doesn't always tell the full story. But if I look and I say, okay, well, what should I do next time? Well, next time, don't wait so long to start meleeing. Make sure my cooldowns are ready. Raptor strike, flanking strike. Make sure I'm doing that properly. If I have the druid, I throw in wing clips where available so I could fish for Wind Fury procs. So that's this fight. The other thing that's important to look at is his Shadow Bolt, which contributes some damage, which I just did not have. Now, see, that's a weapon oil he put on his offhand. So when you have a druid, you can put that on your offhand, and that's going to help you out. The other thing is he had a warrior. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, we can actually go here to Hunter Sim. And if we go to settings, and let's just say we simulate this, 524. And then we take off Battle Shout, 473. That is a major DPS loss from not having Battle Shout. And if I don't have a druid with me either, so no druid either, it actually goes down to 437. So by having that druid and having the warrior, it is an insane DPS increase. And those are things that I can't control if I'm just trying to join a group and get a run in before the lockout. But things that I can control, making sure my cat is fully buffed with scrolls, making sure I bring the proper consumes, and making sure that my talents are correct. So if you're looking at this and you're like, oh, well, I don't know what talents I should be running. Well, let's look up Thomi, right? So he's on Living Flame, and you can actually go to atlasforge.gg and check his stuff out. So if we look, he's running improved aspect of the hawk. He's running thick hide, improved revive pet. See, this stuff doesn't really matter because we're not actually going to be using our ranged weapon. But what does matter is unleashed fury, ferocity, frenzy, bestial wrath, and bestial discipline. These are all going to increase our damage. If we look, I'm also running that. If we look at his runes, he was the only hunter, so he's running Heart of the Wild, and he's running Dual Spec, Beastmaster, Flanking Strike, and Melee Specialist. All of that's the same. So all else the same, we're pretty close in our preparation. I could have done better with bringing the proper consumes because I know myself. I know for a fact I did not. But even so, my rotation was a bit scuffed. I'm going to pay for that. So my parse is going to suffer. Now let's take a look at another fight as an example. We're going to go to Crowd Pummeler because it's one boss. You're always on the boss. It's pretty easy. Let's go to Crowd Pummeler, right? So I'm doing 345 DPS and he's doing 624. Once again, we can see that his cat is out DPSing my cat by quite a bit. He's getting dismantle procs way more than me. Guess what? My main hand wasn't enchanted. So you can see that, I'm losing 3% damage by just not having that extra dismantle. And you might be thinking that's not really a make or break, but when you want to parse, having full enchants and bringing that prep work, it really makes a difference. He also was just getting a bonus from the wing clip with the wild strikes. So wild strikes is contributing about 100 damage to the fight. So if I had that, we could just say, well, let's say maybe I go to like 400. Well, I'm still down like 100 DPS. So what is happening that I'm not doing right? Let's again analyze the timeline. Look at that. I only start meleeing 3 seconds in. He starts meleeing 2 seconds in. he hits his Raptor Strike, then Flanking Strike. I hit my Flanking Strike, then Raptor Strike. Oh, well, should I be reversing that? Well, let's take a look and read the tooltip. It says you and your pet deal simultaneous instant damage, 100% melee. Afterwards, your Mongoose Spike and Raptor Strike deal 10% increased damage, stacks up 3 times. Raptor Strike has a 20% chance to reset the cooldown. So, ideally, you'd want a Flanking Strike, then Raptor Strike. But if we look at the timeline, it just looks like he's Raptor Strike, then Flanking Strike, which not really sure why. Maybe I don't understand something, but it definitely should be Flanking Strike, then Raptor Strike, which, at some point I Serpent Sting. That's a DPS loss. If we look at my melee, it's pretty consistent through the whole fight. At a certain point, my pet just stops and I don't have pet uptime. If you look for him, it looks like his pet doesn't attack during certain points, and he loses some melee uptime as well. I'm assuming that this first melee uptime loss was due to having to run from a cog or, unlucky with something. Maybe the second one was he got grabbed during the fight. Being able to understand the timeline and understand how your abilities interact with each other is going to help you improve your parse. And the best thing to do is just take a look at what the best players are doing and just think like, oh, well, like, how can I implement that, right? So he used Immolation Trap for some extra damage in the beginning. Realistically, I could have done that. I could have laid a trap before the fight and it would have helped. And then the Shredder would have actually made that do more damage. So all these effects are stacking on each other, right? And if we look at the whole fight, pretty straightforward. There we go, casts. So he does cast Bestial Wrath. When does he cast Bestial Wrath? He casts Bestial Wrath right at the beginning. Is that something that I'm not doing? Let's find out. Oh, I am doing that. So this is a pretty good breakdown of his casts and how it looks. So that's just like a breakdown of how you would analyze that gameplay and say like, oh, this is what I could be doing better. The other thing that I want to talk about is Atlas for GG, where you can also compare gear and say like, oh, like what does he have that I don't? As it turns out, he doesn't have too many things, right? He is running this as his current setup. I am missing the other melee weapon, unfortunately. The other nice thing is I can also see what his enchants are. And you could do the same thing by looking at this fight and seeing what his enchants are for this fight. So if we go to summary, he has all of this, all this gear, all these enchants, and I have this gear and these enchants. So clearly I should be getting better enchants and I should be paying attention to the gear. Of course, some fights are different than others, and there are times where during some fights it's better to run certain items over others, right? I'll show you guys this. So this is actually the WoW Sims, and it's not completely finished for every class, but it's still very useful because I can go to the settings and I could see what I should be doing for certain situations, right? So full buffs, everything with my gear against a mechanical boss, about 510 damage given this rotation, right? So this is something that's really useful, and I would recommend you try it out, you put in your gear, you see what different rotation does, you see what a different pet does, you see just how much world buffs contribute, right? So if I don't have world buffs, bang, like 50 DPS lost. Oh, I also don't have a druid. Well, now I just lost even more. Oh, and I don't have a warrior. Let's get rid of Battle Shout. Gone. Oh, I didn't come prepared with consumes or scrolls or food. Even more gone. Oh, I don't know, like, just say you have nothing at all. I just come with my own buff. It's 323. Oh, we don't have Fairy Fire, Curse of Recklessness, or any armor pen. Garbage. And that's another thing. We didn't have Fairy Fire, but if I'm gonna sim for what I did have and I was being, fair to myself, it's like, okay, Crowd Pummeler, because that was a better fight for me, and I don't want to be extremely bad. Okay, so 345 damage. This was a mechanical fight. This is the gear I have. This is the rotation I'm using. This is the talents I'm using. And I didn't have a druid, so I didn't have this. I did have Heart of the Wild. I did have Stand Buff. I did have Blessing of Might. I did have Wisdom. I did not have Leader of the Pack. I did not have True Aura. I did not have Battle Shout. I did have Blessing of Wisdom, although it doesn't really matter. I didn't have this, and I did not have Power Infusion. I did not have the Fortune. I did have Spark. We did not have any of these. We did have Curse of Recklessness. We did not have Fairy Fire. We didn't have this, but I usually Hunter's Mark before the fight just cause. And I do have this procking. I didn't use that. I didn't use that. I used no scrolls on my pet, and I used on my offhand a solid sharpening stone. And let's see, pet attack speed is 2-0, pet uptime 100%, in front of target, no, skinning leatherworm dwarf level 40, simulate. So 303 DPS is what this is coming out to. Realistically, I did a little bit more than that, so that's pretty good. I should be happy, right? But this is generally what I would expect. Maybe I got lucky with procs or whatever else, but let's just use, for example, if I had the right group, if I was using the correct potion, the right food, let's just say doing everything possible. I have the scroll, I have that scroll, I have my pet scrolls, I have Battle Shout, I have the Dark Moon Fair Blessing, I have Leader of the Pack somehow, I have True Shot Aura somehow, there's Fairy Fire. It goes up 150 damage, which is a lot. So this is just, play around with it, get used to it. See, like, oh, if I switch out this gear, is it going to be better? Understand what your stat weights are, which you can actually look at your stat weights here, and you can say, like, oh, well, agility is worth X amount, strength is worth Y amount. I want this amount of agility over that much amount of strength. So these are all just things to think about of what can go into your parse, because sometimes you're playing a class where your parse is reliant on the raid composition, and you shouldn't beat yourself up too much. And if I look at my ranking for this fight, I did all right. Like, I got a 56 without the boost of a warrior and a feral druid, so I'll take it. If you look at my best fight, I did have things going in my favor. I was able to get a 95, right? So it's just stuff that I think it'd be cool for people to understand, have an idea of how you can use this data, what tools are available, and just check things out. I hope this helps. I know I'm not some like god tier player, but I try to perform good for my guild. I am guild leading. If you're interested in joining us on some runs, Crusader Strike Alliance on NA, you can send me in-game mail. This is my character. And yeah, that's it. Like, I hope you guys found something useful about this video, and just let me know if you want more information, like data analysis stuff, because I love this sort of thing.